The Financial Survival Network, helping you survive and thrive in the new economy. Go to carrylutz.com and sign up for 30 free micro trainings on financial survival.
1490 WGCH. This is Kerry Lutz, and you're listening to the Financial Survival Network, which is brought to you by Miles Franklin. They've been in business selling gold and silver for over 20 years, and I'm a customer because when you buy, they ship. For more information, find them on the web at milesfranklin.com or give them a call at 800-822-8080 and get a free quote. We've seen an amazing attack or decimation of the precious metals markets. So I figured I'd bring somebody to you who's been involved in that space his entire adult life to get some perspective on it. I've got Shawn Perger. He's from British Columbia, Vancouver, and he's head of Foremost Research. Hey, Shawn, welcome to the Financial Survival Network.
Happy to be here, Kerry. Thank you for the invitation.
Always a pleasure. We connected at a conference a while ago, Shawn and I, and he's got real good knowledge, not just of the precious metals markets, but also being located in Vancouver. He sees what's happening with China and the Chinese population migration into Canada more probably than any other place on the planet. So Shawn, we've seen this decimation of the gold and silver markets over the past year, and it kind of looks to me like when you go into the butcher shop and you buy 2 pounds of sirloin, and you're really only getting 1.5 because he's got his thumb on the scale. Do you think the governments of the world, the central banks, have their thumb on the scale of the precious metals prices?
Well, Kerry, there's numerous reasons for the dichotomy in the gold and silver stock market compared to the price of gold and silver. That's been going on for a long time. And of course, there is some manipulation being played by the central governments in order to maintain any credibility to their overinflated fiat currencies. And I think that we're into a situation now where it's becoming desperate for them, especially with the euro falling the way that it has and the crisis that's going on over there. The reason we're seeing such a depression in the price of the stocks, Kerry, fundamentally, is people are frightened. They're running scared. They don't know where to go. We're seeing some wonderful mining companies that are trading below asset value, some below cash value. And when you see things like that, that's just pure paranoia. I think that there's a lot of reason. The reason for that is because people, instead of buying a stock now, they can buy an ETF, which we didn't have in the last gold bull market, which has made a significant difference. And where people can put their money, they can get out easily, very quickly. It trades with the price of gold. It's a little bit more predictable than the average stock. And another reason is probably because people have been, abused in the stock market for so long now. I think that a lot of people are wising up and they're not going near the market anymore. Just take the Facebook tobacco, for instance. That's not going to help the average investor want to jump back in the market either. And I think that they see there's manipulation across the board, so they don't know what to do anymore. And I see the frustration in people when I speak to them about it. People that hold gold and silver, they're holding the gold and silver because they have nowhere else to go. And they don't trust the market anymore, and so they're not investing in the gold and silver stocks the way that you would anticipate in a scenario where you have these companies that are well managed, well financed, and undervalued.
Yeah, isn't that amazing that there's companies out there? If you go back to the turn of the century in the U.S., we had this guy Benjamin Graham, first securities analyst, real securities analyst. Uber value investor, created it, and one of the formulae that he used to determine stocks that were undervalued and that would probably appreciate was he took their net assets, deducted their debt, and then if the cash left over was greater or close to the share price, that was a great buy. You bought it and you held it, and eventually the market would come to its senses. We see so many stocks like that, and they're all undercovered, the juniors especially. And like you say, there's this panic, and the individual has left the market because he looks at stuff like MF Global, he looks at the bailouts, he looks at crony capitalism that you don't produce anything. It's just you have a contact with the powers that be, and they take care of you. And he loses faith in that type of system. And I think what you're describing and what you've been encountering is a loss of faith in the system. And at least when you're holding the physical metal, it's nobody's obligation. There's no counterparty risk, right?
Well, Benjamin Graham was the consummate value investor. And at that time in the stock market, he was a breath of fresh air. These were new concepts, portfolio management and, all these fundamental things, that Warren Buffett still follows today in a lot of ways. They all came from Benjamin Graham. And I couldn't even imagine think that would be a revolutionary idea, value investing back then. To us, that's just like a common sense to look at a stock and try to find the value in it before you invest in it. But where we're at right now is people are afraid, I think. I think that everybody's concerned. We're not getting straight goods anywhere we go. Like our government's not telling us the truth on what's happening. We know that all the financial numbers are fudged. We don't know what the real inflation rate is. We don't know what China's doing. And with the United States having to support most of the world right now, especially Europe through the World Trade Organization and the IMF, the United States, they're the main backers here. And Americans don't realize, I don't believe, the majority of them, how much money America sends over to Europe to plug some of the holes over there through these operations. And I think that with all of this gray area that is out there, with no definite answers, with no clear picture of what's really going on in the world, people don't know what to do. And that they're not going to go sit in the stock market in situations like this. The American dollar is still the ultimate store of value in the world. In not my opinion, of course, gold and silver is the ultimate store of value. But for the average person who doesn't even understand the gold market, doesn't understand the silver market, because it is a sophisticated market to understand. There's nobody stating, you don't have a government stating behind, oh, no, we'll back up the price of gold and silver like you have in the United States. But I think people understand that the importance of the U.S. currency in the world is still the dominant piece of value that the average person jumps to in emergencies. And with the euro crisis happening the way it is, and the Chinese fearing the collapse of their economy, and the United States citizen fearing the collapse of their markets, I believe that that's the strength where the U.S. dollar goes, and I think the gold's being abused because of that.
Yeah, and obviously, if gold's going down, people lose confidence in gold, and then it's like, what do? We just go to the dollar, and it's that force of habit that's worked for the past 100 years, and people don't understand that the world has changed.
It has, and we're getting to a near point where we could. I believe that we're still in a secular bull market when it comes to talk to the precious metals market. I certainly think that this is the buying opportunity, possibly of lifetime, in a lot of areas. Some American depressed real estate markets. I think those are some screaming buys there if you're going to be patient and want to look for long-term holds. But gold and silver right now, like I said earlier to you, Kerry, there's some experts here that have been in the stock market for 40 years in the venture markets in Canada, and they said they've never seen a deeper trough in their entire career. This is where the smart money makes money. And when you see everybody complaining and the average broker out here complaining that the markets are done, everything is over, well, that's a signal. That's a buy signal to me. If you're a contrarian investor, that's when you come into the market. And if you have cash sitting on the sidelines and you're not starting to dip into this market, into this precious metal market, and the gold and stocks especially because they're undervalued, but even gold, like gold and silver, they might come down a little bit. We have a problem here with gold. If it hits that around the $1,500 mark, there's going to be a lot of trading, electronic trading that kicks in and starts to sell. So there could be a big dip coming up here in that market, but you can't always pick the bottom of these things. So I think that just you nibble away on the down days. You go look for the undervalued gold and silver stocks. Some of the big producers out there that are their asset value is far exceeds their share equity, and you go out and you nip away at these, pick away at these stocks, and start building a nice diversified portfolio with some of the top miners right now. And I cannot see that not being a winning strategy for anyone.
Yeah, definitely. Especially there's stocks out there that are paying dividends, so you're getting paid to wait. They're making more money than ever because their cost of production is so low. Some of them
and Kerry, there's a selection of these. There's a number of them. Like you can find 20 of those type of situations out there that are like I say, they're once in a lifetime opportunities. You don't see this. I've talked to brokers who've been around for 40 years. They haven't seen this.
Yeah, it's rather remarkable, and you see it in a lot of resource plays. In the final analysis, when it all hits the fan, the only wealth you're going to have is the wealth in the ground. So for Joe Two-Pack, who used to be Joe Six-Pack, what does he do? You know, if he's got a little bit left in his IRA, his 401k, well, 401k, you have limitations on what you can invest in. But what does Joe Two-Pack do to play this market to get back a lot of the wealth that has been forcibly taken from him, from you, from me, during this depression?
Well, you know, the average person out there, there's more pain coming down the road for the average person. I feel bad for people whose house they've worked so hard to finally own their own home, and what is it? 60% of the U.S. housing market's underwater, and those would be the middle class people who've struggled and worked hard to raise their children properly. Their savings accounts have been decimated. Their dollar's about to get destroyed, I believe. I just can't help but see that, you know, this deflationary period that we're in is only because the banks are sitting there trying to improve their bottom lines to the continued greed that we see in that sector. And we got a long ways to go here. I think we're on the cusp of something that could be very scary for the entire world. The whole world is in a depression. I don't care what you hear on TV or what your politicians are telling you.
Yeah, no recovery, huh? No green shoots.
There's no recovery. There's no recovery. If you're talking about a recovery where a country puts in $1 trillion into the system through phony, deaded paper printing concepts, how can you call that a recovery? I don't understand how you can even use that term. The unemployment rate is a fudged unemployment rate. The inflation rate is a phony inflation rate. You're not getting fundamentally straight numbers. They're all manipulated numbers, even from one side of the party to the other. From the Republicans look at it, the Democrats look at it. You're having two different opinions about the same thing. How can that possibly be?
Yeah, there's no difference between them, really.
Well, there's not. There's this one conversation being controlled by the elites.
Exactly. So Joe Two-Pack, he goes, buys some silver, and if he's got some money, buys some of these stocks that are really depressed, hopefully paying a nice yield in the process, and then he kind of sits back and waits, huh?
I think that is an outstanding strategy for anybody right now, because there is great value out there if you do your homework and you go look at the numbers of some of these companies, and they're not hard to find. Just follow some of the big guys, the smart people out there. You know, the Casey Research experts, the Eric Sprotts, the John Maldens. So, you know, they're really smart people in this. That's all they do is focus on the precious metals market. They understand the supply and demand. They understand the use. They understand where the central banks are going to start buying, when they're going to start buying. They understand this market very well. So if you want to find those good opportunities, these are the people that you need to listen to.
Yeah, couldn't agree with you more. I've had many of them on the show, and they've made similar comments to you, and the price of gold and silver were higher then, but really you kind of just have to put the emotions aside and just charge in there, not bet the farm on it, but certainly, at least with the physical, you always have something in your hand. It always has value, and its real value has done nothing but go up in the past decade, and we can expect more of that, regardless what the
Well,
currencies do.
Terry, one of my most favorite little quotes I've ever heard is, 400 years ago, if you had an ounce of gold, you could go out and you could buy yourself a nice suit of armor, get yourself a nice horse, a nice hotel for the night while you're going down your trails, and a good dinner. Well, that same ounce of gold will probably buy you the same thing today. So the value of that gold has not changed. It's the value of the related currency, fiat currency, that has changed. So gold is a store of value, and we have to realize that. It's a safety net. It's like buying insurance, which is something that you've heard all along. Gold is something you don't buy thinking that you don't buy it to make money. You buy it to protect yourself against the collapse of a currency or hyperinflation, or all of these things that are definitely down the road. I believe they're down the road in the near future than a lot of people are willing to admit, because they're afraid to admit that. But when we go over that edge, when the world does come to that point to where this is not sustainable anymore, all this artificial support in the world markets and all this manipulation of economies, when it comes to an end, it's not going to be a pretty end. You go talk to German people to this day, 80% of the German population is paranoid about hyperinflation because it was so dramatic.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, every time it happens, it happens a bit different, but the fact that it's the reserve currency that's at stake right now is really troubling, because everything depends upon it. All the values are based upon it.
Well,
and
Kerry, the United States is willing to go to war to protect that currency, and that's been proven in recent memory.
Mhm.
I don't believe that. There's a great book out right now called Currency Wars.
Sure.
I highly recommend it. It's on the top of my suggestion list for anyone. If you understand what's really going on in the world, it's not about oil. It's not about owning land or property. It's about currency, and the United States will do anything to protect its currency, and they have to, because if the currency starts to, if another system comes into play where they're going to get competition for the U.S. dollar as the reserve currency, that's when big trouble will happen. And I certainly believe that that's why Saddam Hussein was taken out. I believe that why the Egyptian Muammar Gaddafi was taken out, and I believe that is why Iran is in hot water right now, because they're all talking about taking other currencies as a currency, and this is a big scare for the United States. They have to protect that.
Yeah, well, that's a story for another day. Anyway, Shawn,
Yep.
Hey, thanks so much for being with the Financial Survival Network. And we've got an interview on the website with Jim Rickards about currency wars. And
Good.
People want to find out anything else about you. Is there a place they can go, Shawn?
Yeah, they go to my website, foremostresearchgroup.com, and we have a couple other connect links to other things that we're involved in on that site, which please feel free to go and ask questions, whatever you'd like.
All right. Hey, thanks so much for being on, and we will talk to you again soon.
Okay, thank you, Kerry. Have a great day.
You too.